Alright, hello everyone. I hope you're doing good. Alright. I'm going to read from the Bible. I am going to smoke cigarettes. I am going to smoke cannabis. I am going to drink orange Kool-Aid. None of these things are none of your concern, because it's not your throat, it's not your lungs, it's not your heartbeat. So, in light of what we see in the media, I would like to discuss something briefly. I would like to discuss the Virginia shooting? Is that what it's called? The Virginia shooting. I'd like to discuss this briefly. I watched the news and they made it seem like this man was psycho. They made it seem like this man was psychotic. I do not know the man. All I can do is read and listen. But it's funny, when you read, different things come up. When you just listen, you're told a lot of shit. Now, I'm going to read to you what it says here. I'm at, excuse me? I thought this was ABC. Nope, it's an ad for that. It is Yahoo News. Here's the title. After shooting, comma, alleged gunman details grievances in suicide notes. Now, if you want to see visually what I'm about to read, you have to type that in. Open a new tab. Pause video, open a new tab. Type that in. After shooting, alleged gunman details grievances in suicide notes. Pluralized. So he wrote all kinds of shit, right? So, if you're familiar with this, he died, and then after he died, his suicide notes came in. Okay, in a 23-page document faxed to ABC News, this is halfway, this is a little ways down. This morning a fax was in the machine, time-stamped 8:26 a.m., almost 2 hours after the shooting, a little before 10 a.m. He called again, introduced himself as Bryce, but also said his legal name was Vesterly Flanagan, and that he shot 2 people this morning while on the phone. He said authorities are after me, and all over the place. He hung up. ABC News contacted the authorities immediately and provided them with the facts. Okay, so he's still alive at that time when the facts came in. Excuse me. My fault about that. In the 23-page document faxed to ABC News, the writer says, my name is Bryce Williams and his legal name is Vesterly Flanagan II. He writes, what triggered today's carnage was his reaction to the racism of Charleston church shooting. So he says the event that happened before that made him do this. Okay? Or allegedly, that's what he had wrote. So while he's running from the cops, he's got time to, he says the cops are after him, they're all over, but he's got time to stop somewhere, fax 23 pages, get back into his car, and whatnot, and so forth. So, the Charleston shooting was a reaction from the shooting earlier that month, which led to the senator making statements about Jesus and Timothy, that we should need police to wear body cameras, which was already going to happen. So he's assassinated and a state senator killed. All right, remember that. Okay, so he's assassinated with 8 other people. Remember, the gunman asked directly for the state senator. And this is now an outcome of that, because of those words. So it's now what you call, just like in Batman Begins, it's escalation. You bring a knife, they bring a gun. You bring a gun, they bring a semi-automatic. You bring a mask, and then you get this fucker. Right? Alright, so. Says, why did I do it? I put down a deposit for a gun on 6/19. The church shooting in Charleston happened on 6/17. So, the church shooting happened, and when the church shooting happened, he went out and he got himself a deposit on a gun. He says, sources say Flanagan's firearm was legally purchased from a Virginia gun store. Okay, so, again, the Constitution is for white people, or Caucasian people. You were a slave during the creation of the Constitution. All men are free and equal, so says the Declaration of Independence, while your ass was still enslaved. Me too, so don't think I'm dividing us. So we were enslaved when these great laws of the caucus taking our nation from us were enacted and placed into effect. So they don't really count for us. Alright, so it'll be easy for them to say, no more guns for black people, because they might shoot white people. Alright, and alright, so says, what sent me over the top was the church shooting, and my hollow point bullets have the victim's initials on them. Okay, so he picked who he was going to kill, and he did this for a specific reason. Now we're going to actually get to the reason. It's unclear whose initials he's referring to. He continues, as for Dylan Rolfe, you wanted a race war, bring it, then you white something. He said Jehovah spoke to him, telling him to act. Later in the manifesto, he talks about other people, other mass killers. Okay, I want to go down, because sources familiar with the investigation tell ABC News that in his attack, Flanagan used a Glock 19, a firearm similar to the one that Cho used in his mass attack of Virginia Tech. He says he has been attacked by black men and white females. He talks about how he was attacked for being gay, black man. Alright, so our mass killer this time is a homosexual. Now, he's got a lot of strikes against him. He's black, or calls himself black, works in a white world, and he's gay. Boy, he really wanted life to be hard for himself, right? Alright, so he says he suffered racial discrimination, sexual harassment, and bullying at work. So this is at work. This isn't out in the streets while he's at the bars, at location he likes to be at. So he's been sexually harassed at work, and this is where the news station is. He's been racially discriminated at work, and this is where we'll just keep going. A source, now listen very close, a source with direct knowledge of his complaints against the station said a pair of tweets sent today and attributed to him accurately reflecting previous complaints he lodged against two people he killed today. So this man, who's a mass killer, killed the people he made complaints about. Wait a second. He was racially discriminated and he was sexually harassed. Do you think he was sexually harassed by the woman or the man? Do you think he was racially discriminated against by the woman or the man? So he was sexually harassed and racially discriminated. Alright, so if the guy hit on him, I don't think he would be like, he says he's homosexual. So I would assume if the guy hit on him, he would be pleased by that. So if the girl hit on him and he turned the girl down, then the girl would be kind of angry. I don't know, I'm just saying, because this is the words that are on the screen. This is the words that are on the screen. So he did file a lawsuit against the station based on the actions of these two people that he killed. Now listen. This is where it gets good. Accurately reflect the previous complaints he lodged against the 2 people he killed today. These are the 2 tweets. Allison made racist comments and Adam went to HR on me after working with me 1 time. Okay, so Allison racially insulted him and Adam sexually harassed him, and when he didn't accept his sexual bait, I would suspect this Adam went to HR and told him he didn't want to work with him anymore. Alright? It says, nowhere in the document does he make specific threats against anyone from the station, WDBJ. In his manifesto, he says he encountered nasty racist things while working at WDBJ-7 in Roanoke, and that drove him to sue the station. I marched down to the courthouse and sued WDBJ-7 by myself, and they settled. Ha! Here's the fucked up thing. When I watch the news, they don't bring this up. When I watch the news, if they bring up the lawsuit, they say he lost. They settled out of court. That means the station had to cough up money. That means when this black homosexual went to the courthouse, the court awarded him. So not only did he sue and win, for some reason, the money wasn't enough. For some reason, the pride of this homosexual says that God told him to just go ahead and kill the people instead of what? He won the lawsuit. What's the point of killing them? We'll find out. It continues. I can remember one day in particular leaving the courthouse, feeling overwhelmed, confused, even some fear. But by golly, I knew I had to fight. He didn't say he had to win, he had to fight. They truly fucked with my life and caused an awful chain of events. He says he even killed his cats in a forest because of them. So this man, this dark-skinned man, this homosexual man, took his cats out to a forest and slaughtered them. Same thing that the psychological books say, that killers will eventually do what, in childhood or before they take bigger life, they'll take smaller life. Starts with ants and bees and insects, and then what, household pets and rodents, and bigger, and then you're killing humans. Flanagan says that, hell yeah, I made mistakes, noting that he should not have been so hurt. Not have been so curt with photographers in Roanoke. But you know why I was. The damn news director was micromanaging. He writes that the photographers were out to get me at WDBJ. One went to HR after only working with me 1 time. That would be the Adam that was murdered. The chief photog told his troops to record video of me if they saw me doing something wrong. I thought I said anything wrong. I said something wrong. So that's an invasion of privacy. Yes, he works for a news station, and yes, they take video of each other a lot. But to take video of someone when they're not expecting it is, I think, a legality. So there's a lot of elements that are being said here. The racism, the attempt to blackball him. The photographer says, the guy who holds the camera says, I don't want to work with this guy anymore. And then you can't be a recorder if nobody's going to record you. that causes a problem in your personal career. All right, so Flanagan suggests after leaving, he was offered a job at a station in Pennsylvania, but WDBJ-7 persuaded the Pennsylvania station to rescind the offer. They didn't talk to the people in Pennsylvania and say, no, just don't hire him, just change your mind. No, they talked to them to a point where they got the Pennsylvania station to rescind. That means rescind. That means we're going to call you up and verbally say on the phone, you know what, we decided we don't want you. That is detrimental to someone in that type of career. Let's keep going. And so it says, I got to the point this time around where I wasn't even looking for a job. I don't need to deal with workplace bullies anymore. That is what lawmakers need to focus on, he adds. Yes, I will sound like I'm angry. See, this is funny, because he says, workplace bullies is what lawmakers need to focus on. Because he was bullied with racism, he was bullied with what? His sexuality. And those people used their what? Their cameras or their positions against him. So he states, lawmakers should worry about this, but when we turn on the TV after this, we see lawmakers doing what? Focusing on what? How to keep the gun out of that Negro's hands. Yes, it will sound like I am angry, he writes in his manifesto. I am. And I have every right to be. But when I leave this earth, the only emotion I want to feel is peace. The church shooting was a tipping point. My anger has been building steady. See, if the church shooting, the media focus on its racism, arguments about the Southern flag. Now we have somebody that's actually, I'm the only black guy that works around a bunch of white people. I'm the token black guy. And the white people are being racist to me. Now my paychecks are affected. Now I went to school, went to whatever, to become this reporter. Now I can't be this reporter. When he tries to stay on the East Coast and move further away from these people, they chase him. So what happens? He goes and gets a gun and takes it to work. In fact, they were at a special location, right? So he knew where that location was somehow. All right. He chronicles the tough times he faced, including financial crashes, So he would get a little bit of money and fall right back down because he can't be employed because there's only so many news stations within an area. All right. He says he used to work as a male model. I am proud of it because he made thousands. So he probably fell back on that money during that time. I tried to pull myself up by the bootstraps. The damage was already done, and when someone gets to this point, there is nothing that can be done, said or done to change their sadness to happiness. It doesn't work like that. Meds, nah, it's too much. And then, after an unthinkable happens in Charleston, that was it. Yeah, I'm all fucked up in the head. He concedes. All right, so we can see the boiling point coming, and what are you going to do when it reaches its tip? I want you to think about that. I will be back in a few minutes, but it will just be a second to you. All right, we are back now. We are reading from the book of Isaiah. We're reading chapter 2. Now remember, in the New Testament, there are no prophets of God. Matthew is not a prophet of God. Mark, not a prophet of God. Luke, not a prophet of God. And guess what? John, not a prophet of God. They're prophets or disciples of Christ. Christ, not a prophet of God. James the just is a prophet of God. The righteous teacher, just, righteousness, justice, side by side. The just teacher talked about in Habakkuk in the riddle is James the just. The wicked is Paul. Isaiah chapter 2. The word that Isaiah, the son of Amoz, saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. And it shall come to pass in the last days. Is that past, present, or future? It shall come to pass. That's future tense. When in the future shall it be? In the last days. So in Isaiah chapter 2, we cover the last moments of what? Human? Man? Man and human existing? That the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains. I might have said on prior to this. This says in the top of the mountains. And shall be exalted above the hills, and all the nations shall flow unto it. So this is no mystery place. This is no hidden place. All the nations of the world will know where it is, and the people that seek righteousness and what? Justice and judgment shall flow unto it. And many people shall go and say, come ye, let us go to the mountain of the Lord, of the house of the God of Jacob. And he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. Verse 4. And he shall judge among the nations and shall rebuke many people. These are not sinless people that come. He will judge the people and rebuke. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation. Plowshares. To what? To farm. And pruning hooks. These are things that are tools instead of weapons. While we're sitting here worried about building concrete, he's just going to give us tools to what? Cure the land. That's all. That's all he's going to do. There's no need for us to war anymore. Why? Because the devil is not in control. What we call the devil, what we call evil, is in control of every nation. The United Nations is nothing more than an assembly for one chair. It's the devil's chair. Now we can use any terminology, whether it be Lucifer, the devil, Apollyon, use any name we want. It's still one wicked ruling many wicked. And those many wicked that he's ruling are your world leaders. It is cheap to make clean food. All you gotta do is grow it, package it up, and sell it. It is expensive to add poison to food. Expensive! That's why we pay high prices for food. That's the riddle to it all. Somebody gives these instructions out. These countries look the other way when poisons are placed in your food. This creator, he just wants you to live clean. Neither shall they learn war anymore. No more worrying about a strategy to take something else from somebody else. Let's take their freedom. Let's take their will. Let's take their gold. Let's take their silver. Let's take their minerals in their soil. Let's take their oil. Let's take. I fought for the freedom of this nation. We were never attacked. Prove to me that we've been attacked, and I'll show you 50 years gone by in a now unclassified document saying it was staged. We've never been attacked. We're the greatest country in the world because we fucking kill everybody. And we take their survivors and force them to live here. We Tiglath-Pilslered them. We Salmanasered them. We did exactly what it says in the book of Daniel. We followed Daniel like a script, and nobody gets it. People, they're following Revelation as a... They're following the book of Daniel. You're enslaved by 10 kings positioned in different areas over North America and Asia. They're all European kings. Why? Because these prophets said so, because the Creator put those words. It's called the Word. There is no the Word in the latter half of the book. In the New Testament, there is no word. It's gossip. Gospel. Your Christ is the God of war. Ares. And you just don't know it yet. Today you call him Kratos. I bet you thought you were awake. You're in the land of Nod. Go to Genesis and look at Cain's children. It's not Enoch. There's no second Enoch. It's Chanur. The Chanur people have been here since before the flood. The Grand Canyon's the recording of the flood. It's called the Great Chasm. Verse 5. O house of Jacob, come ye and let us walk in the light of the Lord. Therefore thou hast forsaken thy people, the house of Jacob, because they be replenished from the east, and are soothsayers, like the Philistines, and they please themselves in the children of strangers. Now, 6 says from the east. Ooh, look at this. It links to Jeremiah 10:2. Are like soothsayers from the east, and they please themselves in the children of strangers. Christmas. Isn't that funny? I just went on a little rant about Christ, and then right here it says Jeremiah 10 verse 2. Do not be like the heathen, for the heathen are at dismay. For the signs of heaven, right? It has to do with the holidays. You're like the soothsayers, or soothsayers like Philistines. The Philistines are the people of Ramah. The people of Ramah live in Central America. That has to do with voodoo. All it takes is time. You're like for 6. Therefore thou hast forsaken thy people, the house of Jacob, because they be replenished from the east. Replenished from the east. And it says, or more than the east. Oh, so they were carried away to the east and started mingling and became greater than the number of the people in the east. That's interesting. Well, we're going to look at a video here because of this. This opens up a gateway right there. Please themselves and the children of strangers. Yeah, Merry Christmas and all that shit. Verse 7. See, you accept Christmas over your own traditions. You please yourself in the what? The traditions of the stranger? Your children see their children. Your children yearn for the lights, the boxes. You're not strong enough to say, well, we're not them, or we don't worship that God, or we worship something different, or we worship in a different way, or that's pagan. Look at the little boy bowing to the tree. That's pagan. You're not strong enough to say that to your child, to yourself. Their land also is full of silver and gold, neither is there any end of their treasure. They came and took your fucking treasures. Every cap on these pyramids, they took. In the book of Maccabees, he tells you, I built 7 pyramids to my family. These freakers stripped them down. If there was an idol, they took the silver and gold off of it, and if it was gigantic, they buried it. Johnny Appleseed spread seed on mega structures. That's what he's famous for. He ain't famous for planting apples. He's famous for covering shit up. Their land is also full of horses. Neither is there any end of their chariots. Their land is also full of idols, and they worship and work of their own hands. They worship the work of their own hands, that which their own fingers have made. So you got to be able to make something without worshiping it. You have to be able to make something and not sell it off as an idol. You can make stuff, it's not to be worshipped. And you don't get that contrast. People believe I need this item and this item and this item and this all makes me. Now I'm me, but you don't need all this shit. It's just shit. Your heartbeat, your self-awareness, your ability to think on your own makes you you. Verse 9, and the mean man bloweth down, and the great man humbleth himself. Therefore, forgive them not. Verse 10, enter into the rock, and hide there in the dust, for the fear of the Lord, and for the glory of his majesty. The lofty looks of a man, the self-importance of a man, the lofty looks of a man shall be humbled, and the haughtiness, the arrogance, the haughtiness of men shall be bowed down, and the Lord alone shall be exalted in that day. This is when all the nations flow unto the mountain. All these things that they did in their life that were wicked is what he's talking about. The arrogant man shall be humbled. The self-important man will feel like he's one of many. He will not have that attitude, that chip. The man that goes and knocks shit over because he's angry won't be mad anymore. You stress, the anxiety that has been building up with inside of all of you. Black, white, red, green, purple, no matter what nation you come from, shall be lifted. These are curses because of what our ancestors have done. Not because, oh, this happened in my life and this happened in my life. It's already been there. And he told us it was going to be there. In each of us. Our own little unique crutch. And the Lord alone shall be exalted in that day. So all the things about a personality that self-exalts itself is going to be scrubbed. 12. For the day of the Lord of hosts shall be upon every one that is proud and lofty. I told you. I'm just not reading this with a curb. I went ahead and defined the words that I didn't understand prior to recording. It took some time. and upon everyone that is lifted up, and he shall be brought low. So everyone is going to be humble. See, you can't invite people to heaven with a chip on their shoulder. You cannot have guests in heaven that will have the idea of usurp. This is exactly the reason you can't give salvation to an angel, to a special son. What if that son turns away from you? What if you give an order the son doesn't like? You can't do that. That is why that unique ability, power that we all crave, only one person holds it. Only one entity. The Lord is a man. I don't care what you think. He already told you in Genesis, he is a man. The earth is his footstool. Crickets and shit have legs. Goats have legs. They don't have feet. You put shoes on their hooves. They don't have feet. The earth is his footstool. That means, let's talk your belief in superpowers and my belief in bending physics. He can make himself as gigantic as he wants or needs. So always remind everything, you're this big to him. And at any time he could go like that. It just doesn't do that action. You know, fall down the stairs, car hits you. You know, he does those actions. Working through men. Alright, so upon all the cedars of Lebanon that are high and lifted up, and upon all the oaks of Bashan. Now see, I'll be damned. I knew I had to do that for a reason. Okay, so like, I'm on this bus trip to Canada, right? And and I read Cedars of Lebanon somewhere. And I was like, I find it funny that they tell us Lebanon is on the other side of the world. And when we think Lebanon, like, what is so important about these cedars? Are they gigantic or anything like that? So I typed in cedar. I didn't want some geologist telling me these are the cedars of Lebanon and these are the cedars of this and that. I just wanted to understand, what is a cedar tree? Where are cedar trees all together? So there's a lot of different places that cedar trees grow together. But really unique, I'm going to read a few off. All right. The Lebanon cedar, cedar native to Lebanon. The Bermuda cedar. Did you know that there was a cedar in Bermuda? Huh? It's in Bermuda. Now, here's what's going to seem really stupid, right? Now, we've been saying Mount Ephraim, the actual mountain, is in Vermont. Syria, or, you know, Sarah stuff is named all through New York. Like Syracuse. Syracuse is probably Syria. Like, seriously. New York is probably old Damascus. Like seriously. Like, Damascus steel probably came from those rivers down there all merging together. Like, kind of by, between New York and New Jersey. Like, I bet that's the only way you can get that much water pressure. And that's why people can't figure it out how to make Damascus steel anymore. When you change the location of what they want you to believe, everything starts making sense. Now, Eastern red cedar. Eastern red cedar is in eastern North America. North by the 13 colonies. Right? Let's read this again. All right? And upon all the cedars of Lebanon. Now remember, Lebanon, right? That are high and lifted up, and upon all the oaks of Bashan. Now, I didn't look up oaks, but I bet if I look up oaks, it's going to tell me oaks and cedars right next to each other. Right? Now listen to this. So that would mean, you know, Lebanon and Bashan are pretty close to each other city-wise. You know how U.S. cities, every major city is about 200 miles from each other? I bet they're within 200 miles of each other. Eastern red cedar, we just did. Eastern white cedar, guess where it is? Eastern Canada. Wow, that's above the 13 colonies. That's, wow. What do you know? Right there on the East Coast, a bunch of cedar trees right next to what we call Mount Ephraim, right next to a bunch of stuff that's spelled like Syria, like Syracuse, Syria, Syracuse, S-Y, yeah, okay, R-A-C, yeah. Check this out. This is something, huh? Oh wait, Eastern white cedar, Eastern Canada, much of north central and upper northeastern United States. All in that 13 colony area. You ever wonder why the Europeans went for the 13 colonies? Everybody else went elsewhere? Mexican white cedar. Did you know there is a cedar in Mexico? Mexican white cedar, Mexico and Central America. Let's see. The Rama people are in Central America. There's a cedar tree in Central America. Right? And the mountain cedar. The mountain cedar is actually a bush. Would have known. It's called a cedar. Figured it would be a tree. But obviously it grows like a cedar, but it's just not a cedar tree, it's a cedar bush. Alright, so now that we know that there are cedar trees here in the Americas, all over, North and Central, I bet there's some in South America, their Lebanon isn't holding up. See, they think Lebanon's Lebanon because what? The cedar tree. They think Mount Ephraim's a little hill over there in Israel because what? Some scholar says this mount could be a... There's a mountain named Mount Ephraim in Vermont. The Lord talks about how His house is in mountains. Every time we read Mount Horeb, that's where the fallen angels fell, right? It's not some little mount. It's a mountain. Every time it says mount, they're talking about a giant mountain. I can't help that the people that lived before you do not want you that live in the last days to know or to pass this information on to your children so they might not yearn for Christ or any other false god given to them by their oppressors. Verse 14. And upon all the high mountains, and upon all the hills that are lifted up, and upon every high tower, and upon every fenced wall. 16. And upon all the ships of Tarshish. Tarshish is what? A Japhet nation? So this is any European nation to some degree. But the Tarshish are a specific people group. And upon all the ships of Tarshish, and upon all pleasant pictures. Now, pleasant pictures, isn't that interesting? When we have movies today, it has a 5 by it, 16 and 5. Pictures of desire. Okay, so the Lord shall be lifted up upon all of these things. All these things that you yearn for, your vanities. What you do with this wood. Tables and furniture. Your fences keep your goods. Men go out and claim mountains every day. And boy, do you guys love your cars, your boats, your planes, and your movies. 17. And the loftiness of man shall be bowed down. The arrogance sucked right out of you. And the haughtiness of man shall be made low, and the Lord alone shall be exalted in that day. And the idols He shall utterly abolish. That's a law. You know what abolish means? Remember when they abolished liquor? And they shall go into the holes of the rocks and into the caves of the earth for the fear of the Lord. This is the wicked people. These aren't the people that are coming to bow to Him. These are the people that held on to them, their ego. They shall go into the holes. For fear. If you're humble, fear of the Lord makes you bow and hope He doesn't come and crack the back of your skull. It doesn't make you crawl into holes. like a demon, like a critter, like an unclean animal that can't walk upright and atone for himself. And they shall go into the holes of the rocks and into the caves of the earth for the fear of the Lord and for the glory of his majesty when he ariseth to shake terribly the earth. And in that day man shall cast his idols of silver and his idols of gold. Your gold crosses, your gold, what? Pennants. Your little silver eye, single eye medallions. Your Egyptian beliefs. Your Celtic beliefs. In that day man shall cast his idols of silver and his idols of gold, which they made each one for himself, to worship to the moles and to the bats. Where do moles go? And go back up. They go in the ground. And they shall go into the holes of the rocks. And where do bats live? Don't bats live in caves? And into the caves of the earth. It's right there. Maybe I'm not using the exact words you want to hear to match this with your modern mind. You can feel it. That's where it's fucked up. And yes, that word has to be used. Because you know as well as I know, when those feelings go off inside of you, it don't matter what you see and it don't matter what you hear anymore. You've been activated. That's dangerous, because that sends you into survival mode. You need to think clearly. You need to read on your own. Again. In that day a man shall cast his idols of silver and his idols of gold, which they made each one for himself to worship, to the moles and to the bats. Remember, where are the dwelling places of moles and bats? You know, they try to get rid of talk about this the other day, because when we were reading over here, it talks about in chapter 1 and 25, and I will turn my hand upon thee and purely purge away thy dross and take away thy tin. They say the silver is dross. The silver is shit to a degree. It's still valuable. But what they're doing is they're taking silver without dross and then putting it in components that eventually you'll just throw away. Like your computers. Once these computers burn out, you're not going to go into the computer and look for the pieces of silver. It's too complicated for you. It's not as easy as ripping in the walls and taking out the copper. They want to get rid of silver. And I'll tell you why I think it is. I believe to a great degree a lot of myths are real. And the solution to a lot of these myths are silver. You've seen vampire movies, you've seen werewolf movies, where silver is the answer. So, if something is allergic, or silver is deadly to it, and one day it will be on this earth again, it would be important for it to get rid of most of the silver. So, just keep that in mind. You know, again, I would buy silver if I were you, because one day, if you are free and there is no law, somebody could have your people enslaved. And you might be able to buy some people back with some silver. 20. And in that day a man shall cast his idols of silver and his idols of gold, which they made each one for himself to worship, to the moles and to the bats, where are their dwelling places. 21. To go into the clefts of the rocks and into the tops of the ragged rocks, for fear of the Lord, and for the glory of his majesty, when he ariseth to shake the earth terribly, to shake terribly the earth. Cease ye from man, whose breath is in his nostrils, for wherein he is to be accounted of. These wars to come shall shape us and the future of our children. There will be things you've only seen on TV and some of you have only read about. Remember who created you. These wars that are coming, they seem about race, but they're really about religion. Be careful whom you choose to side with, because wickedness grows faster than righteousness. Good luck to you. I hope the best for you all.